Welcome to the Essence of Liberty podcast. This is the horsemanship podcast where we discuss all things liberty to help you understand, connect, communicate, and play with your horse in a gentle, subtle, and force-free way. We'll get a bit nerdy about equine psychology and learning theory to understand the science behind it all. And we'll also dive into how to motivate your horse, ways to strengthen your relationship, solving those common problems, and how to use liberty as a way to build your horse up physically, mentally, and emotionally, all in half an hour or less. I'm Dr. Nadine Lindblom, former equine veterinarian, and I'd like to invite you to join me on this journey as a student of the horse. What is gentle guidance? In my liberty training, I like to rely mainly on rewards and what I call gentle guidance. And I'd like to explain to you guys a little bit about what gentle guidance is and how it is different from the usual way of using escalating pressure and release. So to understand this, we need to go back a little bit and just make sure that we have the right definition of liberty, because in today's horsemanship world, liberty has a lot of different definitions depending on who you talk to. So the most general and the most common definition of liberty is simply working with the horse without any physical restraints. So the horse is loose in the area and he doesn't have a halter on or a bridle on or anything like that. And this is supposed to show then that the horse has the choice whether or not to participate in the session or not. But what we need to remember is that horses are very conflict avoidant and they can be really, really easily intimidated into staying with you, even if they don't have any physical restraints on them. So if you were to use pressure and release or escalating pressure and release and make the wrong thing hard and the right thing easy or generally just less hard or less difficult, then you can cause the horse to choose the path of least resistance. So if you were in a round yard and he walked away from you, you could say, okay, well, if you're going to walk away from me, then I am going to put pressure on you and make you run around the round yard. And when you look at me or when you come to me, then I'm going to let you rest. And that is very, very effective. That's how I started my liberty journey. And it does work, but it's not really giving the horse a true choice. It is literally just giving the horse a harder option if he doesn't stay with you. And the most common problem that evolves from that type of training is that when you go in a bigger space, it generally doesn't really work anymore because the horses are very quick to know or to figure out that if they just run away, if they're in a big space, like that they can run faster and further than you, and they generally take that option if they don't actually want to be with you in the training. So while you're in a smaller space or in a fenced arena, you can use pressure and release in order to cause the horse to perform, but to me that's not really liberty training, because liberty should be about the horse's choice and about them choosing to participate, rather than it being more obedient space where you're teaching the horse to be really obedient and to do what you're telling them to do when you ask them to do it. It's important to keep that in mind. So because of that, I tend to try to stay away from that typical pressure and release way of working as a way to motivate the horses. So using pressure and release is a very, very powerful motivator, because horses are very motivated to seek comfort and safety. So if you make something uncomfortable for them, they're going to be very motivated to find the comfort and safety, but they're going to be working under a submissive and avoidant mindset. But what you'll find with working with this avoidant and submissive mindset is that the strongest way to reinforce a behavior, the absolute strongest way, if your horse does something amazing and you're like, wow, I really want to reward my horse for that. It's not a reward, it's relief. But if you think of it as, the strongest reward you can possibly give your horse for that moment is to drop everything and leave your horse alone, or to finish the session, put him back in the paddock. And when I'm working with my horses at liberty, I want my horses to really be enjoying the session. I want them to kind of not want the session to end. I want them to be really keen for the session, for me to start a session with them. I don't want them to be in the session being like, oh, when is this going to end? When are you going to put me back in the paddock? I want them to be really engaged and really choosing to participate, because if they're waiting for me to just leave them alone, they're not really going to be they're not really choosing to be there. They would rather be out in the paddock with their friends grazing. So these days, instead of relying on escalating pressure and release to motivate my horses, I instead rely on positive reinforcement to provide my horses with the motivation to try to figure out what it is that I'm asking them to do in order to get their next reward. So the positive reinforcement is giving them the extrinsic motivation, and the gentle guidance is my communication to the horse and guiding him towards his reward. Because the positive reinforcement is providing the motivation instead of the release of pressure, the motivation is already there. And because the horse is already trying to figure out what to do, then it's really, really possible to use very subtle and very gentle communication, on a very, very quiet level. And the possibilities when you do start working with your horse on this really quiet and gentle level are endless, because that's how horses generally communicate with each other. They're not loud, like they don't need to be very loud. It can be a flick of an ear, it can be a glance, it can be body position. Their communication with each other are on such a subtle level, and that's normal for them. Us humans, we generally rely a lot on vocal communication, language, and we do have a lot of body language, but our main communication is words and talking and using language in order to portray different messages. The body language that goes along with the way that we talk is generally not something that we're terribly aware of. However, horses use mainly body language, so they are way more perceptive of body language than what humans are. We use it, but often without really thinking of it. We know how to read it, and we can get kind of vibes here and there from different people, and that's generally stemming from their body language at the time. Horses, being so perceptive, are generally more perceptive of our body language than we are of our own. So communicating with horses effectively requires a level of body awareness and knowing how you're using your body, knowing how you're using your energy, your posture, your intention, and your movements in a very specific and clear way while still staying on a very, very gentle and subtle level. So, gentle guidance is basically communicating with your horse without escalating or threatening or intimidating or causing your horse to find that relief from your pressure. However, your horse is still going to be very attentive to any releases or any reductions in your energy. So even if you really gently and really calmly are communicating to your horse, for example, to back up, and you raise your energy a little bit, and by energy, I literally just mean that feeling of anticipation and getting ready to ask for something. Like you might lift your body a little, like a slight little bit, just to show your horse, I'm going to ask you to do something. You may lean towards him, and when he does take that step back, you still want to release that energy. So you ask for the step back, you might raise your posture slightly and lean towards him a little bit to ask him for that step back. And when he does take that step back, you're going to breathe and you're going to relax. You're going to say, thank you for listening to that guidance. You may follow up with a food reward depending on the level of your horse. If he's just starting to learn the backup cue or following your guidance in this way, you may follow up with a food reward just for taking a step back. But if your horse is a little bit further along, then you're just going to acknowledge his response by breathing out and saying, okay, thank you for taking that step back. Then you might ask for another step back by then raising your question again slightly, and then lowering that question or letting go of that question when he does find the right response. Because even though we're trying to stay away from intimidating, escalating pressure and release, raising your energy and saying, hey, I'm asking for something, are you listening? And for him to come up into the space of going, ooh, okay, there's some guidance here, let me try to figure out what it is that she's asking. Just that little bit of a raise in his energy and requiring to think and figure out, that is a very low level of stress, and not necessarily bad stress. Stress doesn't always have to be bad. Like playing and learning and curiosity, those are all very low levels of stress. But as he is trying to figure out what it is that you ask him to do, there is that little tiny elevation of stress. And then you breathe out and say thank you. And he will sense that. He will respond to that little release in that moment. So while the pressure wasn't threatening and it wasn't, as you continue working with this, he's not expecting to be rushed or to be pressured into an answer. Just that moment where you're asking for something, he goes, "Oh, okay, what am I supposed to do with this?" And that stress comes up ever so slightly. You can still let go of that stress and say, "Yeah, that was the right answer," by breathing out and relaxing back and letting go of the question that you were asking. If you're holding on to the question, say, "Okay, step back more, step back more, step back more," then your horse is like, "Oh, nothing is really changing. Am I doing the right thing?" And then he might try something different after he takes 3 steps back because you're still holding on to your question. So you can think of it as little waves that you say, okay, asking for the step back. So the wave comes up a little bit. He takes a step back and you release. And then you ask for another step back. The wave comes up. You release. So that every time he's responding the way that you would like, you're showing him that he's doing the right thing by relaxing in your own body. That goes for moving together as well. If you're moving together side by side with him with a little bit of distance from you, ideally, and you're asking him to pick up a trot, and you may raise your own posture a little bit and pick up your walk ever so slightly. When he matches you in the trot, you're not going to hold on to that tension that has come up in your own body. Not that it's much tension, but it's just that anticipation and that ask for the trot. When he does pick up the trot, you're going to acknowledge that by letting go of the question and just flowing with him in the trot. And by flowing, I mean that you're just relaxing and you're just going. You're not asking for anything. You're just saying, "Oh, this is a nice trot. Lovely." And the same goes for canter. You may pick up your posture a little bit and ask for the canter. He picks up the canter. You're not going to be like, "Canter, canter, canter, canter," and be cantering in your own body the whole way. You're going to say, "Oh, that was a good transition." And then you flow with him in the canter. So that is my vision for the gentle guidance. And I'll break it down a little bit more for you now. The gentle guidance begins from your mental image of what you want to ask your horse to do. You want to feel the question in your entire body. You want to be able to picture your horse doing it. And for me, I can almost feel what the movement would feel like if I was the horse, which may sound a little bit weird. But I don't think I'm the only one who kind of does this, because I've seen many people when they're riding their horses, you can almost see the rider trying to do the movement in their own body, or trying to collect in their own body, or trying to do a shoulder in their own body. And you can see often instructors, when they're teaching students how to do the shoulder in, they will do the shoulder in their own body. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about here, that you want to be able to kind of feel how that movement would feel if you were the horse. And I mean, you don't have to do it like that. I just find that it's kind of useful. And maybe that's something stemming from when I was really little and I was running around on 4 legs like a horse, um, going over obstacles and doing piaffe and everything, and having a great time. And I think if hobby horsing was a thing when I was little, I would probably have been very, very into that. But speaking of hobby horsing, if you don't know what I mean by hobby horsing, then go to TikTok or Instagram and search hobby horsing and you'll be entertained for hours. But if you look at the kids that are doing hobby horsing, it's a very good example of really being able to put yourself in the horse's movements. Like, you watch them and they are really, really pretending to be the horses, and they have picked up on all these little things that they've seen in dressage competitions that the horses do, and they are applying that in their imagination as they are pretending to be the horse and the rider at the same time. It's just really cool to see that imagination and how much they're able to sort of pretend to be the horse. Anyway, this is such a tangent. Let's get back to, okay, so gentle guidance. You don't have to go to the extent of really picturing yourself as a horse, but if that comes naturally to you, then I think it's really useful. Not so much because I'm thinking that this is some kind of telepathic thing. I'm not discarding that, but also because I like to be science-based in the way that I work. I feel that being able to do this And having that mental image and that inner feeling allows you to be more clear in what you are asking. You have a very clear image yourself of what you are looking for in the horse. You're not just willy-nilly asking for a question, be like, oh, was that it? Was that what I was asking? Or maybe it wasn't. Like, you are preparing yourself for the question and you are ready to reward it because you know exactly what it is that you're asking for. So if you want to be really sciencey about this, then that's the way I would think about it. Next is your energy and your intention. So your intention behind the question begins before you ask the question. So first you have a mental image of what it is that you're going to ask. Then when you are about to ask for something, you will have an intention, like this feeling of an intention in your body before you even move your body. It's you're intending to do this. You're intending to ask for this question. You're intending to move your body in this particular way. Then you have your energy. And if you think about your energy, if you are getting ready to run a race or a sprint, then your energy, you're going to be really up in your energy internally, versus if you're in like a meditative place, you're meditating, or you're in a very calm spa and it's got plinky plunky music and it's all very, very calming and relaxing. Your internal energy is going to be really, really low and very calming. That's the difference in your energy. So generally, depending on what it is that I'm going to ask the horse to do, my energy will differ. If I'm going to ask my horse to lie down, my energy is going to be low. And my intention to ask the horse to lie down is going to be there, but I'm going to be projecting this low energy as I'm asking the question. I'm going to be thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have a little bit of a lie down and a roll in the sand? That's the kind of feeling that I have inside me. Whereas if I am asking the horse, or if I'm like, ooh, let's see if we can get a burst of energy, let's see if we can get some play into this session, the energy that I have on the inside is going to be really high and really bouncy and really sharp and really ready. And it doesn't mean that I'm too sharp in my external. It's just that feeling on the inside, like something's about to happen and it's light and it's playful and it's exciting. That's the energy. So you have your mental image and your inner feeling of the movement that you're going to ask for. And then you have your energy and your intention just before you move your body. And then you are actually going to move your body to ask for the thing. And that's not an abrupt addition of a cue. You're going to very slowly raise your guidance. So if I'm standing in front of my horse and I want him to take a step back, which is one of the first things that we do when we're introducing the food rewards to the horses in the Essence of Liberty Online Academy. So you are standing in front of your horse and you want him to take a step back because you're going to teach him that giving you space when you have food rewards is what gains him the food reward. Not coming towards you and into your pocket, but actually giving you some space. So you're going to stand in front. You're going to have your mental image, inner feeling. You're going to have your intention and your energy ready to ask your horse to step back. Then you are going to raise your body slightly, raise your posture, and you may lean in towards him very slowly, very gently. And if you need to, you might step in towards him. You might put a gentle hand on his chest to say, hey, can you just take a step back for me? And the hand on the chest is not, you're not digging your fingers in. You're not going to like slap him or anything like that. You're just laying your hand on his chest and you're waiting. And generally your horse has responded before you get there because you've already done your mental image. You have your energy and intention. You are walking in towards him, and generally that's enough for them to go, oh, it just kind of comes naturally for them to step back when you do that. Especially if you're there working with food rewards, they kind of want to follow you a little bit. So when you step into them, they've already taken a step back. And that is your moment to use your bridge signal, which we talked about in one of the recent episodes, and say, that moment right there is why you're getting your food reward. That's how this works. And this applies to everything in terms of guiding your horse towards different answers, that you can change what you're doing. You can move your body and you can make it clearer for him. But clearer does not mean that when you're standing in front of him that you're suddenly going to wave your hands in his face or, get really loud and be swishing the whip around in order to scare him to take a step back. That's unnecessary, but you can be clearer in that you change what you're doing, you change your body language, and you step in and you help him. You say, hey, you already know this cue of stepping back when I touch your chest. That's just, it's just something he already knows, generally just from general handling. Most horses understand that. So why not use that to help him find the answer? In some cases, I will use an escalation of energy and an escalation of pressure. And this really depends on the horse. If I have a really confident and playful horse that is not scared about me raising my energy, I will use the raise of energy to trigger some play in him. I will say, hey, go for a run, or I'll have a little burst of energy in my own movement and encourage him to match me and to find that playful state. But you doing that towards a horse that's really timid or even shut down, that's just going to cause them to become kind of afraid of you. So you have to pick your horses and their personality and make sure that you are able to do what your horse is able to cope with. In the academy, we have Levi, Nellie, and Billy, and Levi is a really social and playful horse, so he can handle the increases in energy really, really easily. Whereas Nellie, she has a history, she's quite shut down, and she's got a bit of a history of not being treated that well, and she's also got a really poor association, very negative association with any whips or any tools or any raises in energy. She just thinks that you're angry, and she's kind of just goes into her shell and she says, okay, well, what is it that you want me to do? And I'll do the thing. Or when she realized that she could actually walk away, then she's like, oh, I don't want anything to do with this anymore. I'm uncomfortable. And then she just walked away. But towards the end, she was actually able to respond to this energy, and she got a little bit playful as well, which was really, really fun to see. But it just goes to show that you have to pick your moments in relation to where the horse is and how well that they can respond to your energy and not feel threatened by it. Sometimes I will escalate my energy a little bit if I think it can help the horse find the answer. Like if he's really struggling to move out onto the circle to move together with me, where we're both walking on a curve, but he's a little bit further from me, so he ends up doing like a bigger circle around me. In that case, if he's not really sure about how to go out on the circle, if I use a little bit of movement with the whip, not necessarily towards him or anything, but just move the whip up and down a little bit, that can be enough for him to go, oh, I want to move away from that. And I go, yes, that was exactly the right answer. Well done. And I follow it up with a food reward. And initially, he might have moved because he has a past association with the whip where he goes, oh, I don't really like that movement. But that's also an opportunity for me to show him that, yeah, I might move this, but it's not in a threatening way. And if you think about it and if you follow this guidance, there's actually a food reward waiting for you on the other side. So it builds their confidence in that way, and they become less threatened by it and look at it more as information instead. The other example of when I would use an escalation of pressure is to set boundaries, and we'll have a whole separate episode about setting boundaries and the importance of them, but I'm pretty adamant about having really, really clear boundaries so that I can feel safe around my horse, especially during high energy work. I don't want to have an ounce of feeling that my horse might come too close to me and might kick me or might barge into me or push me or anything like that. And when you don't have clear boundaries, your horse is generally quite busy trying to be too close to you. And as soon as they let go of that feeling, then everything just flows so much better. And you're not in this constant negotiation with your horse where you're kind of saying, please give me space, please give me space, please give me space, but not really showing them that they do need to give you space. So I am very adamant about having clear boundaries because it has a lot of positive effects, and I can spend more time saying yes to my horse than nagging them. So, but we'll save that for a different episode. But that is all that I have for you in today's episode. I really hope that you're enjoying this podcast so far, because I'm really enjoying creating this content and sharing with you my ideas and my way of training in a lot more detail than what I can on social media and just the regular kind of posts here and there. So if you're enjoying this podcast, please let me know, leave a comment, share it as well with your friends and family, because if you find it useful, then chances are that someone else in your circle will find it useful as well. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one.